I'm here at the playground of Children First, and I'm looking forward to meeting with Monica, who will talk to us about how to look for a babysitter and how to choose your childcare center wisely. Come with me and listen to what Monica has to share with us.
Yes, the question of how to work out who to leave your child with. Your precious child, maybe for the first time that you're leaving them with someone and you're living abroad or you're living in a new place and perhaps you don't know where to start. I would say the first place to start is working out your own criteria for what you look for in a babysitter. Does it matter how old they are? Does it matter what their qualifications are? If you've got a baby and they're very, very young, then I would recommend that you go for someone who is really quite well qualified. And the Swiss regulations for baby care centres say the same, that the younger the child is, in a way, the more careful you have to be. You won't necessarily get signals from your child to tell you if they're happy or not. When your baby is only aged, say, less than 6 months, they're not even able to express whether they were distressed before, whether they really believe that someone is coming back to them. They could get very distressed if they were left with someone they weren't happy with, and you want to be sure that person is going to tell you how they were and what has happened in the time that you haven't been there. So you need to look for, perhaps decide on the age and the stage of life of the person you're looking for, the qualifications, can you recognise them? You can take a paper copy of their qualifications, and in this day and age of the internet you can look up where these qualifications come from. Was it a 20-hour course? Was it a 20-day course? Was it perhaps a 2-year course that they qualified with? These things make a lot of difference. There are also nanny agencies in Zurich, so you can find people to help you in your search. And obviously, if you're visiting daycare centres, then you can ask people what are your backgrounds, what are your qualifications. You can ask the person in charge to tell you about the people, even if they're busy caring for the children when you visit. And you can tell a lot from seeing someone with your child. You can arrange social visits at the beginning of your relationship with a babysitter or a possible nanny. You cannot ask them to work. You cannot ask them to take responsibility. The minute that you ask them to do something for you as a piece of work, legally you need a contract. And to be offering a contract, you need to be sure that you understand the criteria for employers in Switzerland and what the employer's responsibilities are, what things need to be included in the contract, which things you'll need to pay. You make payments to the social insurance agency. You perhaps make a 100 franc a year payment to your insurance policy provider so that your babysitter is covered at home and they're working for you. All of these administrative things you need to do before they start work. But at the beginning, just to meet someone and to trust your instinct and to say, do I like this person? Will my baby like them? Will my child like them? Do they seem to get on well? That's a lot of information already. We make a lot of decisions on the basis of feeling when it comes to making this leap of faith, which is required in order to trust someone who is actually a stranger. And I was very lucky as a parent myself. I had someone help me whose family I knew, but not everyone is in that situation. And when you travel abroad, you're trying to be resourceful and to cope with these strange situations. But you'll never feel happy if you leave your child with someone you're not comfortable with. So make sure that you allow enough time, you don't make hasty decisions.
Is it smart to put on a nanny cam?
Personally, I think the trust is so important that if you haven't got the trust and the communication on a good level before you even leave your child, let alone once the relationship is established, then that's probably not a good sign, and introducing a spying camera or piece of technology is not really going to tell you everything that you need to know. The fact that you put it there is perhaps the problem. Maybe you haven't got enough trust to leave them with your child in the first place. Or if there is, I heard of someone whose household help reported that a nanny was very depressed after she'd been bereaved and wasn't treating her child properly. And this is a very difficult situation, and you have to think, can I trust this person with my child? Can I trust the person giving me the information? If I can't trust them, then perhaps there's no point in pursuing that relationship anyway. So instead of spying on them and trying to work out more from a camera which is in one place in your home and may not capture everything, perhaps you should work on the communication with that person instead and see if you can get somewhere and see if your feelings change from talking with them about what's happened in the day. If obviously your child will tell you as well, when they're a certain age, above 3+, and you're getting more and more information verbally and in their behaviour, and children do tell you a lot. They tell you if they're happy, if they're not happy, if they want to stay, if they want to leave. When people are picking up their children from us, sometimes it's very difficult for the child because they've had a difficult morning, and then they're really upset when their parent picks them up because they've been holding on to a lot of emotion, and we give them full information for what's happened. You're looking for that information as a parent so you can make good judgments about a very long-term commitment to this relationship with your carer. If the child's very happy, as I'm happy to say most of them are all the time, then really what you're looking for is information about what they've been doing, which activities do they like. How does the carer or the care centre complement what you're doing at home? How does it contrast with what you do at home? If you can find somewhere where they can offer you a broad curriculum, a broad offer, so that your child is really getting different opportunities than they would get with you, then I think you feel much more adventurous and much more willing to let them be brave and be apart from you in the day. If you're looking for someone to replace you and you want to have a lot of control over everything that they do, then obviously a one-to-one relationship gives you more control in that you can say, I want you to do this, this and this today. But the question is whether you're then really letting the child have their own relationship with that carer. If your nanny is going to be satisfied in her job, she wants presumably some kind of independence to make her own decisions about which activities they do, to follow the cues of your child, to make judgments independently. A qualified nanny is a professional, so you don't want to be dictating everything they do from minute to minute. And I would think that it would help parents as well to think about the kind of person they are individually. We all have different personalities. Certainly I know of myself and my friends and a lot of women who are well-educated, privileged people, that we expect a lot of control in our lives. And sometimes having a child really challenges this, because the child has a mind of their own, the nanny has a mind of her own, the preschool teacher has a mind of her own. You can't always dictate how things will go. You can ask for enough information to feel that your views are respected, so that when you get information you also give information. And very important to tell your sitter or your nanny or your carer what's happening at home. Is the child happy? Are there issues at home that they ought to know about? Sometimes we can tell children are unhappy, but the parents haven't told us what's happening at home, and we find out afterwards that mum was away or the parents are perhaps separating, and if only we had known, we would have been able to perhaps support that child over a period of time a little better, maybe even more sensitively than we have. So I would really ask parents to be open and to expect that openness in return, and this is probably the best sort of carer-employer relationship you can hope to create.
Yeah, and there is a difference whether parents look for a full-time nanny or for a babysitter. They use periodically 1 or 2 days.
Yes, that's true. And in Zurich, there are
Do you need a
reminders.
contract for? Do you need a contract for such babysitter as well?
You do. If they even work a few hours for you, legally you need a contract. You are an employer, even for those 2 hours. But it does depend on the age of the babysitter. Under this, I'm not sure about the exact age that they become legally independent for employment. I think it's 18. And under that there are certain rules in Switzerland for how much you can ask them to work. And obviously you yourself as a parent is going to be thinking, can I give someone this young this level of responsibility? It's easier if you're at home with them, or if they're just helping you. Many parents choose au pairs in Zurich because they will be with that young adult, the 18, 19-year-old, who will be living with them. They'll get to know each other very well, and the au pair will often simply do what the mother has shown them how to do. They may not have much experience. That's certainly possible, but it depends on your situation as to what you need and whether you can share your space with someone who's an au pair who's coming from abroad and perhaps is an older responsibility for you to take care of. For just a few hours a week, there are lists in the Gemeinde of Zurich, in the community halls, where you can get different babysitters recommended of different ages, and usually they will speak a local language. So providing you can communicate with them, that would be a good place to start if you just need someone to help you while you're still at home and you just want an extra pair of hands from a young girl. And I know that there are also agencies and websites where you can get lists of babysitters. So really, in this age of the internet and Google, you'll have no trouble finding whole lists of people. Usually people want someone who's been recommended by a friend, or you at least want to ask for a reference. If you're going to employ someone on a contract and be a full employer and ask for references, then you may as well ask for a disclosure of criminal convictions. And if they're new to Switzerland, if you're employing someone who isn't Swiss, then of course you need to ask them to bring that from their home country or to get it sent within a certain period of time. If they're Swiss, then any adult in Switzerland can get a list of their clear criminal record from Bern, from the federal government. So that's really no problem. I would say that it's very difficult on your child if you just have someone a few hours every now and again, because they don't get to know them properly. So ideally, if you make the decision to have anyone look after your child with you not there, you may as well make it a regular thing, at least to start with, even if it's just once a week, and allow the child and the babysitter to really get to know each other. And your child will soon tell you if they like them or not. And that way you can, get them off to a good start. You don't want to make it such a difficult, fragmented schedule that they don't really have a chance of bonding. Until the age of 6 or 7, and then after that, I think children are a lot more flexible. They go into a different stage of life. They're able to cope with more different adults. And that's why, of course, in Switzerland, in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, they used to impose that children didn't go to school until they were 7. They lowered the compulsory age in 2008, and now children go to the kindergarten from age 4.5 or 5. And they're finding it's a very interesting mix now of what they expect of the kindergarten teachers, because a lot of international parents have shown them that it's okay to teach children through play, and they can learn, and they can even learn to read and write at an early age. This was really uncommon in Switzerland, and really right until this day there are many Swiss kindergarten teachers who simply don't believe that you should do that. And from their point of view, childhood is this sort of sacred time where you should play and have a lot of free will and make your own mistakes and work things out in the group. And once you've got these social competencies, then you can be ready to move on to the practical sitting and working at a desk. And they have quite a free program in kindergarten, and then they have a very strict normal school morning and several afternoons a week from the age of 7. So the child is getting little structure until they get to that first year of school, and then they get a lot of structure, and it's quite black and white, the difference. Whereas in the international environment and in many private schools, we are lucky to have a lot of options. We can employ people who do have the training to teach reading and writing at an early age. At Children First, we use the early years curriculum for the foundation stage from the UK. But there are also schools that offer the IB, which is it's an international baccalaureate sort of preschool primary phase program and pre-primary. And there are also forest kindergartens and places where they offer some really alternative approaches to children learning in the private sector. In the Swiss system, usually care and education under the age of 5 is all paid on an income-related basis. So once you're above a certain income, you're paying the same as you would in any private daycare. Obviously, there's more local integration in a local childcare centre, or in a local forest kindergarten. You're going to get to know the outside world a lot better if you're going there 2 or 3 mornings a week. The one thing to mention about that is that you still need to ask the same questions, even if it's an alternative option. Whether it's a forest kindergarten or a Montessori school or a Steiner school or an international school, you still need to work out who will your child be with every day. Who are they going to be relating to? Do you like those people? Do you think your child is happy? And you can only do this by visiting places. So visit a lot of places, be open to different messages and different information that people give you. And think, because when you've observed in a place for 20 minutes, you've actually probably been able to get a lot of information, but you need to think about what you saw, perhaps make some notes after the visit so you don't confuse one place with another, and ask people, for their backgrounds, and ask, are these details listed on your website? Can we look them up after the visit? Do you have any information you can give us about your staff team and their qualifications and their backgrounds? And then I think parents will feel that they're well informed to make that choice from all of these wonderful options that we have here.
Is it difficult after being in a Swiss local school to go back to an international environment for children?
In general, people say that any change it takes a child about 6 months to change systems or to settle into a new group, even if it's just a change within the same system. So obviously you have to allow a bit more time if you're going to ask your child to change language completely or to change culture. What I describe about the different options expresses so many different belief systems about children, and you want to choose a place which is compatible with your family belief system and your family culture. So that's quite difficult if it's in a foreign language. So I think you need to give yourself time as well to get to know the place, maybe visit several times if it's a place where you don't speak the language. Make sure you can find a way to communicate with the staff. And then if your child does go into the local system and then you're expecting them to be able to switch, that you try and make sure, for example, that they're not the youngest in their year group, that they have the chance to get confidence from being in the eldest half of the year group, and then when they make the switch, they've got perhaps a little bit of time to play with, even if they do have to adjust and even if they fall behind in that time. And while children are aged up to 8 or 9, I really think children are flexible. And what the research shows is that children do not respond well if you change them more than once or twice. I mean, it does matter how many times you change their environment. So you want to be pretty sure, if you choose a preschool, that it's going to last for 2 or 3 years. If you choose a kindergarten, that they're going to be able to stay. In the Swiss system, kindergarten is 2 years. In the international system, it's only 1. So, you want to be sure that the next 2 or 3 years ahead of them, you can imagine them staying in this situation. Stability is something that all of us want for children. Parents, teachers, the government, everyone recognises that stability is important. So I would say that's one of your quality indicators. Does this preschool or this kindergarten match what our family is likely to be doing in the next 2 or 3 years, so that we can make our own individual decision about what will be best for our child? And don't forget that every other parent has a different set of life circumstances. We try to protect our children from too many changes, but they do happen. And there are many professionals out there who can help us if our children run into trouble. Don't be isolated. Talk about your fears, talk about your plans, and if you get news that you're going to be posted abroad again, give the school due notice. In an international environment, they're very used to people coming and going, and they will have procedures in place for when a child is needing to leave mid-year or leaving. There's going to be many other children leaving and new ones coming. In a local environment, you might get even more stability and less familiarity with the international way of life, which may make it more difficult for children who are going to have to move, simply because they may not have staff who are really imagining it from their point of view and seeing it as a positive thing as well as something that needs psychological preparation. So you need to check that out amongst the staff team in the place where you're going. If you're international and you choose a local school, then meet the local staff, meet the teachers, talk with them about how they would feel if their child had to leave. Would it be very unusual? What would they do to help the child with the transition? This is your right. As a parent, you can ask many, many questions. It's much better if you ask them at the beginning and you don't sort of get into a situation, into a contract, because most places for childcare or kindergarten education are on a minimum 12-month contract. So you don't want to get into that unless you've thought about the cultural issues and the language issues. And speaking of language, there are a lot of really interesting language options for children in Zurich. We at Children First like to monitor how children's language is developing. And and try and give parents an idea for how long it might take them according to their attendance every week and their different language backgrounds. Every child has a different language background. They may have 2 or 3 languages in the family, they may only have one, but it may not be the parents' first language. And I find that it's very important to think about your child's individual language development. So you perhaps discuss it with the school. This is my child's background, this is what you offer, how would the two fit together, how would this build on their first language or supplement their dominant language? And you're looking for a place where people are familiar with this kind of discussion, because we're lucky in Zurich that there are so many people who have worked with children who are multilingual, and it's best to take advantage of that while you're here. You know, for example, there's a wonderful sort of language learning window at about 4.5, and you'll notice in your child's first language a real vocabulary explosion as they're really benefiting from the foundations that you've laid as a family in your family language. And that's complemented, it seems to come at the same time as this openness to learning a new language, whereas the toddler phase from, say, 18 months to 3 can be a slower language learning process. And that's often because the child is learning to produce in their first 1 or 2 languages, and so that may not be the best time to add another one. I can't give you general rules because every child is different. Some children are more sensitive to melody than others, and they hear languages better and they repeat them better and learn them quicker. Other children don't, and some children appear not to be learning, and then after 10 months of not speaking a language, they suddenly come out with an absolute whole pure sentence, grammatically correct, and they've got the instinct and they've been absorbing all that time. So I can't tell you this is the perfect age to do this or the perfect age to do that, but do talk about it with people who do have this experience, because you'll find that you can imagine what your child is likely to be developing and how you might be able to influence the direction of their languages through your choice of a babysitter or a nanny or anyone who they have a significant relationship with. That's what it boils down to. It's about who they love, who they trust, whoever they learn to have this attachment with, and they learn that they can trust them, and they learn to be relaxed, and they're learning happily, they will absorb their language. And that's why it's important that carers and early years teachers speak in their native language, in their original language, that they speak grammatically completely correctly, because then if the child is absorbing the whole relationship with them, they will absorb the grammatic instinct too. And that's a very special thing that is really, I think, something a lot of expats look for when they move to Zurich, is to improve their languages or to make sure that what they do speak is done with some consideration, and it's not a mishmash of 4 or 5 different languages, you know, that they can't tell which one the child is speaking really well or not. So yeah, do take advantage of that. I mean, I think that our international nursery school is really used most by bilingual children, because the parents don't want them to lose their English while they're here. They're perhaps thinking of an international education or moving around the world, and they really want to make sure their English is very good, not just okay, you know. But there are other parents who aren't in that situation, who know they're going to stay for 10 years. They really need to learn German, you know, not just through structured teaching, which will lead them to be able to monitor their German. They want them to basically to change their home language to German. And in that case, obviously, we wouldn't be their first choice. Then they would choose a local place or a bilingual school. And there are many good ones around. And there's a group called The Bilingual Way, which you can find on the website, which has 5 bilingual schools advertising their kindergarten and primary education, for example, and how it leads through into the Swiss system and builds up to Matura level. You can look on the websites of all the international schools and see how much German they teach. We teach it 3 times a week in kindergarten, which is an absolute standard for language learning. At the ages, we have a mixed age kindergarten, so it's ages 3 to 6. In some Swiss kindergartens, you might find in private ones that they have staff who speak other languages and that they use with the children, but you have to check what is their policy, what is their concept, what are their principles. Do they decide, yes, we're definitely going to speak this language and all the children are going to learn it? Or do they give the child free choice about which language they can speak? If the child has free choice and there are other children in the group who don't speak the foreign language, they're very unlikely to learn the foreign language unless they make friendships with the children who speak the new language. If they have a choice of adults in the classroom, then they can choose who to go to, and they're not having to use the target language. What we call target language is what you're aiming to teach a child. So all of these issues add up to the different principles and practices of each school, and visiting each school and meeting who the child's teachers will be is extremely important, cannot be replaced with internet visits or virtual visits. You need to be in the room with the person and feel how they would be, hear their language, hear the standard of their language, and probably most importantly, even if you know that it's a good school and there's good management or good leadership or it's very stable, or that the staff turnover is very low, or that people are very happy to work there, you still need to meet the individuals who will day to day be with your child. And ask if there are any new schemes. You know, is there a new training scheme, which means that there'll be a different person every 6 months working with your child, because sometimes parents sign the child up for a private school and they have no idea that the people are going to keep changing. You know, it's not, I'm not saying all of the team, but some of the team. So obviously you feel better informed if you've asked at the beginning, and I mean most schools should tell you as well, this is how we structure our team, this is the number of teachers, this is the ratio. I mean, in the research on what is quality in a preschool, they look at the factors that are influencing quality in a preschool. So they say there are processes, day-to-day interactions, the kinds of activities, the breadth of activities, whether they have a curriculum and they have a plan for what they're doing with your child, or whether it's free play and then a bit of guidance or a bit of observation, whether it's child-initiated or adult-led. Quality studies show that a combination is best. You have both child-initiated and adult-led in the same environment, in the same day. You need to look at the principles behind the whole outfit, and that includes the ratios. So if the ratios are good, then for a baby you'll get 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 care. And there should be a key worker who is responsible for your child, your baby, and will give you information about their daily digestion, sleeping, general happiness, you know, perhaps what they ate. You know, these are all very relevant things to babies who are not yet 1 or 2 years old and can't tell you what they've done in the day. And this key worker should be someone who gets to know you and your family, perhaps the other siblings if they're coming in sometimes. So they're really getting to know more, they're getting to know the baby, but the child is a centre of what one writer has called nested spheres. You know, the child is the centre of the sphere which is home, the sphere which is school, the sphere which is community, the sphere which is the local once-a-week playgroup that he or she attends with his mum. You know, I mean, these are very important experiences for young children, and they reflect all of these experiences in their behaviour and in what they learn. So the more of an overview a carer has of all of the influences on your child, the more they'll be able to give you information which is specific to their school, but which is taking the child's whole life into account. And that's a really special thing, because then I think you've got, you know, not just a carer, you've got a partner, you've got a friend in the person who's looking after your child. And this also helps to build the trust. You really realise that you depend on each other for the information, and you do a better job, both of you, from having that communication. So I can recommend any place that operates these sorts of systems and has a good ratio. When you get to older children, for toddlers you might ideally look at about 1-to-4. For this is 1 adult to 4 children. If you're a preschool, we offer 1-to-8 for the kindergarten, which is ages 3 to 6, and obviously there's no comparison with places that have like 1 teacher and 30 4-year-olds, because these places, whether they be state schools or private schools, are operating a completely different concept. And you know, although quality shows that class size is important, and that's why parents choose places that have small groups and small classes, it is possible for a very talented, experienced teacher in a Swiss village school to operate a class for 30 children very, very effectively. So there are always exceptions to the rule. Even when I say to you, these are the quality indicators as the research says it is, it's still not possible to be absolutely sure that there isn't an exception to that rule. I would say educate yourself about what the quality indicators are in general, the ratios, the policies, the qualifications we've discussed, the age of the child compared to the age of the carer, the stability, sorry, that's our preschool, the stability of the whole relationship, whether there's a high staff turnover, whether the staff who are going to look after your child are planning to leave or planning to stay. You know, these are all things that you can ask and you can find out about at the beginning. And I wish you a lot of luck, because it's a big venture.
And can you tell us your website, the website of
Yes,
Children
Children
First?
First is www.childrenfirst.ch, and of course, welcome to Children First.
Thank you very much, Monica.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.